This program is intended for informational and educational purposes only. All views and opinions expressed are the views and opinions of the individuals and sponsors presenting them, and not the LTB network. Enjoy the show.
This is Sex and Science Hour with Brian Sovereign and Dr. Stephanie Murphy. Get your freak on.
Hey, welcome to Sex and Science Hour.
Don't mind us, we were just dancing.
Brian's over here twerking in the studio. And the reason we can do that is because we got standing desks, and now we are coming to you from a more energized perspective. We are not sitting there wasting away our insulin resistance and gathering fat on our asses. We are actually doing the show standing up, so hopefully this will be a livelier one, and the dancing probably helps with that.
I imagine a lot of people are working out while they listen to it, so hey, we're all...
You know, we need to get in on some of that. It's just not fair that we don't get to work out while we do our show.
It's all a healthier lifestyle altogether.
Exactly. To bring you Sex and Science Hour for years to come.
That's right.
So we've got an interesting show planned for you today. We are back in the studio after a round of travel, and this is actually going to be one of those weeks again where we are recording a couple of shows because next week we're going to be at a couple of Bitcoin conferences as well.
Yeah.
So
then we're taking a little break.
Yeah, there's going to be
from conferences, not the show.
Mucho relaxation, and we'll actually be probably more able to keep up with the news that's happening and our listener emails, which we love. You can email us at show@sexandsciencehour.com. Keep them coming. We got a goodly number of people who email us.
Yeah, even when they disagree, I love it. You know, and everybody's generally pretty kind about it.
Me too. It makes for good show content in between our twerking.
Absolutely.
So we've got a lot to talk about because we haven't actually recorded a show for a couple of weeks.
Yeah.
So we got a lot of show prep amassed, and this is a story that I'd like to start out with, Brian. You actually found this and put it up on Facebook, and to my amazement, I looked at it and said, the future is here. Now you're going to be able to, if you are lucky enough to know a hacker and perhaps know one in a more intimate way, you are going to be able to program and customize a small device such as, a vibrator with Arduino, which is an open source circuit board kind of thing, right?
Yeah. It's pretty much an open source, almost a controller box. I mean, it can do all kinds of things.
Controller box?
Yeah.
That's what you do with it, huh?
That's right. So, and I wouldn't, I'm not going to confirm or deny that I'm some kind of hacker, but I see the opportunity.
That's the sign of a true hacker. They never say it.
But I see this as, the sky's the limit as far as pleasure. I mean, once you're hooking up an Arduino to like a Hitachi magic wand, which already for years has had quite the hackerspace around it.
Has it really?
Yeah.
Is there like a whole culture of hacking your Hitachi?
Well, the Hitachi magic wand's been around for how long?
Oh, gosh, 40 years?
40 years?
Yeah. I mean, this is one of those vibrators that is like a thinly veiled kind of sex toy, like it used to be.
Yeah, they kind of don't tell you that it is, but There's
a picture of a woman, massaging her shoulder with it, looking like she's having a very good time in the Sears catalogs from the 1970s.
Right.
And of course, if you want to know about the history of the vibrator, watch the movie Hysteria. That is a great film
fantastic
about,
movie.
How there used to be this so-called disease called hysteria.
Yeah, not the great Def Leppard film. This is actually about, like the early 19th or early 20th century.
Yeah, when women, you couldn't talk about sex. It was like a prudish culture, and these women used to go to the doctors and say, "Oh, I have hysteria." And then they would get a special massage, and they would have paroxysms of delight, and then they'd be cured at least for a couple days.
For some, it'd be even sooner. But
their hands got tired, so they had to invent machines to help them out. And look how far we've come in
and the Hitachi magic wand
intervening.
Exactly. And the Hitachi magic wand's still kind of the Cadillac. And it's been around and built the same way for so long that...
Well, don't mess with success. It's popular for a reason, actually. I mean, a lot of women say that this is just the best vibrator that's ever been made.
Oh yeah,
it's very popular.
And it has, like, if you go on Amazon, there's a lot of accessories you can buy for it, like boxes that control the speed and all that. Because I've heard a lot of women say that it can be a little too harsh, like its speeds can be a little too much.
Yeah.
So this would allow you to control it, and this is why people would be interested in an Arduino connecting to a vibrator. That way you could get, really that genuine customized feel.
Can you make it
great
like
sex really requires?
Yeah, can you make it like pulsate or like go with a story or go with a song or something perhaps?
Actually, if you hooked up the right stuff, you added the right pieces, then sure, you could have it connected to, or essentially just have it listen to the music playing.
Maybe someone could write up a little script to like make it work with our theme song or something.
Oh, that'd be interesting.
I don't know how that meshes with it being like the Soviet March. Maybe you could pick a different song by roll music, but
or maybe put on like Usher's "Scream." And that'll
you love that song.
Good.
You are just so looking for a chance to plug your favorite song.
You better believe it.
But this is another reason to date a hacker. I agree. Think it's great.
Yeah, and
Arduinos are really cool. They have so many other uses. If you think about an open source kind of circuit board, I've seen people make PCR machines that they can use at home with them for $300.
Yep.
A guy I knew who worked in a biochemistry lab, and a PCR machine is a machine that replicates pieces of DNA that is used for genetic testing and all kinds of other uses in science and research. And I knew a guy who made one for his lab for like $100 using Arduino. And these machines would cost thousands of dollars if you just bought one from a company and it was closed source. So that's cool.
Yeah, OpenPCR is really popular now, and Arduino is a big part of that.
Yep, OpenPCR, that's what it's called.
Yeah.
And then I knew another guy who was trying to basically build a greenhouse, a farm, where he could grow food really efficiently. So he had like aquaponics going on.
Yeah.
And he had like a server that was based on Arduino that was sensing the humidity and the nutrient concentrations in the soil.
It would automate everything. It was
and it was automating all the watering and feeding of the plants. So there's just so many uses for it. And, write into our show and tell us what you use Arduino for, because I'm sure some of our listeners have really cool projects that they use this stuff for.
Especially if you do happen to use it for a vibrator.
I'm curious about
thinking
that.
Thinking of automation, you can just lay back and enjoy.
We're not trying to be creepy or anything.
No.
Don't say, But if you want to share with us, we'd be open to hearing what you do with your Arduino.
We care about your anonymity.
That's right. And speaking of apps, there was this news story recently saying that there were some Google apps or apps for Android that were in the Google Play Store that were like secretly mining Bitcoins. Now, I don't know why you would do this on, like, if you're trying to build a botnet, why do you target phones? Like, wouldn't someone notice that their phone is heating up in their pocket and running really slow?
Yeah.
And probably not even mining many Bitcoins. This is kind of like a fail of an idea.
Yeah, I think it was doing all kinds of cryptocurrencies, not necessarily Bitcoin. And it's really a fail because, even, like, there have been for, I dare say, years now, there's been official, not like a hidden app, but there's been official Litecoin miners. I tried for Android.
I tried about a year ago to mine Litecoins on my phone.
Right.
And even a year ago, when the difficulty was much lower, I didn't get a thing.
No,
because it's a phone. Of course not.
It's impractical. Even phones are getting a lot more powerful. Tegra 4 chips and Tegra 5 chips. They have 72 cores and all this stuff. Really, it's so minute, the amount that you get. And people could say, well, what about scale? If it's pool mining and you had millions of phones doing it, would you get something? Maybe.
But did they even have millions of phones?
I can't imagine it. It'd have to be one of the most downloaded apps in the Play Store.
It said the apps have been downloaded by millions of users, but then they got removed. And it said there was one that was on like between 10 to 50,000 phones and tablets.
Right.
But even then, how many Bitcoins?
Yeah, I don't think this. No, I don't think this is practical at all, and like almost a waste to do. I would venture more that someone was just saying, "Hey, can I pull this off? And what would it look like?" And that's what they did. I can't really. There's no profit in this.
So there's a commentator here in this article that I'm looking at from RT, and he's saying that the person was mining Dogecoins with it.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say. I can't picture it'd be like almost a waste to do Bitcoin. And then as soon as it says Dogecoin, I'm like, well, is RT even? If it wasn't RT, I wouldn't believe it. So
Well, Brian, we've talked about this enough on the show, so I'm not going to get back into it. But, Doge is getting more popular. People often say this now, Bitcoin, Litecoin, and Doge. And people are saying in the future is Bitcoin going to be the gold and Litecoin's the silver. And then Doge is like, what you tip in and kind of the companion animal. I thought you were
going to say, is Doge going to be the silver? And I'd be like, oh.
Well, some people, maybe they say that too. I mean, it is based on Litecoin. But anyway, if your phone has been burning a hole through your pants pocket, you may want to check on your apps and see if there's any malware in there.
Yeah, use something like Lookout.
Right, and Lookout is an antivirus program. We've been talking about technology and Bitcoin and science and sex. And what better way to address all those topics than on this show, right, Brian? It's Sex and Science Hour. We're on the Let's Talk Bitcoin network. We do talk quite a bit about Bitcoin and cryptocurrencies as well.
Yeah, I like to think we're qualified.
Yes, trust us, we're doctors.
At least you are.
And we got a listener email that I wanted to bring up on the show. This is actually, a couple weeks ago at this point, but since we haven't been in the studio for a little while, I really wanted to make sure that we got to it. This listener alerted us that there was a that Bitcoin evangelist, you might even call him Bitcoin Jesus, that tweeted something about a Bitcoin meetup where there were burlesque dancers there. And he, tweeted a picture of a woman that was holding up a big Bitcoin QR code.
In Tokyo.
And she was wearing a little garter, and she was kind of mostly nude, but she had pasties on, I suppose. Right. And this was at a Bitcoin meetup. And some people were kind of upset about this because, they thought that's not very inclusive. That's kind of objectifying of women. If we want more Bitcoin meetups to include women, or if we want women to come to our Bitcoin meetups, why are we basically having dancers go to the meetups?
Right.
Is this how women are supposed to be viewed at a Bitcoin meetup? And then some people said, well, I'm a woman and I'm into Bitcoin and I'm not offended by this at all. In fact, I like looking at burlesque dancers. I would give her a tip, and this wouldn't turn me away from going to a Bitcoin meetup, and it's just beautiful, and that's it. And everybody should stop being so offended.
There were, I could see where people would be offended by this. I really can. And is it a situation where, you need, males dancing too, and you better take a picture of them? No.
Yeah, let's objectify everybody.
Yeah. That's not what I'm saying, at all. But it's important to put this in context, and the person that tweeted this picture tried to, but didn't really explain himself very well, in that this is Tokyo. This is Japan. And in Japan, this is not outlandish by any stretch of the imagination. If anything, it's practically normal. This is a country, especially city, where from the back of a menu, you can order a prostitute by hair color, the whole thing.
In fact,
I have. So multiple times. So, this is something that is possible. My real issue with it is that it felt like it was sent. Like the point of the picture was not, look at this beautiful woman. Look at how, Bitcoin has moved society forward. Because I think that's what a lot of people, especially the more libertarian bent people with Bitcoin, is like, wow, Bitcoin's going to bring in that society where, people really like the class system kind of maybe goes away or whatever. And I think inside of that, people are expecting, better out of people. And I think this picture was sent off with the very purpose of objectification, saying, woohoo, we're at the strip club, boys, and we took this shot. I'm not saying there's anything necessarily inherently wrong with that. Okay.
But wasn't there some debate over whether this is like a professional meeting or it's just like a social thing?
That was a problem too. Was this a Bitcoin, what kind of Bitcoin meetup was this?
Yeah.
Because there's a lot of meetups that happen all around the world where it's serious business.
Yeah, very professional.
And money's changing hands. Companies
jobs
are getting
jobs
are being offered. Companies are being created.
No, not that kind of jobs.
Not that kind of job. Yeah. So, that raises the question, what exactly kind of Bitcoin meetup was this? Yeah. And I don't know that was ever really discussed. If it was a professional setting, maybe this isn't necessarily the best way to go about it. But I don't feel that the whole attitude of it was a celebration of the beauty of a woman. I think the attitude of the tweet was a degree of objectification. Mm-hmm. And a lot of the people that I meet, why aren't there more women in Bitcoin? Because I mean, when we went to San Jose for the Bitcoin conference in San Jose,
yeah, they had booth babes.
They had booth babes and all this stuff, and it's like, come on, this is it. We're the new generation. Let's move forward. It
definitely sent the message that this is for the guys, and,
and
like,
that
please, I don't mind looking at beautiful women. I actually enjoy it quite a bit, but it was sort of a professional environment, and I didn't feel like super comfortable with it. I mean, I didn't let it ruin my life or like ruin my fun at the conference or let me stop me from going to other conferences.
Right.
But it wasn't like my idea of a perfectly wonderful place,
Exactly. And statistically now it's pretty much proven that booth babes actually harm business. They don't increase business.
Wow.
And so even this isn't forward thinking.
Yeah.
This felt like...
Well, do you want someone to come to your booth because they actually want to know about your product, or because there's a woman there? Maybe they're more interested in her than the product. Like maybe they should actually take away from it. But
right.
But I mean, getting back onto the issue, the larger issue, I guess, of like women in Bitcoin, and I say this as a woman who's been interested in Bitcoin, but I'm not speaking for all women, of course. I'm just one woman. And the point is that all women are individuals. You're talking about 3.5 billion people here worldwide.
Sure.
Or maybe a little bit more, right? And the fact is they're individuals and they have their own thoughts and opinions and ideas. And some women are going to see a burlesque dancer at a Bitcoin meetup and they're going to say, I am not comfortable going there. Get me out of here. And I'm not going to use Bitcoin because they're all a bunch of sexists.
Right.
And some women are going to say, I want to go to that meetup. Let me bring some millibits on my phone so I can give her a tip, and then there's going to be all kinds of stuff in between. So if you are the Bitcoin meetup organizer and you're thinking, well, should we have this at a bowling alley or a strip club? And actually in the town that we live in, there's one that has a bowling alley and a strip club combined. So you could have the best of both worlds.
Right.
But if you're thinking about where to, how to structure your Bitcoin meetup, just be aware that there are going to be some people, maybe women, maybe men, who don't like the environment where people are being on display, or perhaps they would consider it being objectified.
Sure.
And they're not going to come. They're going to be turned off by that. And if you care about having those people attend your Bitcoin meetup, maybe you want to reconsider. And make it an environment that's a little more inclusive to them. And if you don't care, then you don't care, right?
Yeah.
And I mean, we're not talking about a situation where every Bitcoin meetup out there is like this. You know what I mean? There are Bitcoin meetups out there that are very professional and inclusive, I think, and you can find them. I mean, it might not be in your city, unfortunately, especially if you live in a smaller town, but you can always start one. And then you have control over how it goes, right?
Yeah, I mean, and it's a great point about the individuality because, I've heard women who, there will be like a woman in Bitcoin meetup specifically for women.
Yeah.
Okay. And I think that's a fine idea.
And then there are women who don't like those because they're like, I don't want to talk about nail polish. And
no, right. Because they'll actually bill the women in Bitcoin meetup as... This is while the husbands are, we'll let them go do their meetup and we'll have ours over here. And also,
some women get turned off by that.
It's a gathering of the girlfriends. And it's like, wait a minute, no, I'm I know as much about Bitcoin as one of the guys. I don't have to have a night where I'm doing something because they're off over there, talking about whatever. Right. So yeah, it's just important to keep in mind everybody's an individual and we need to respect that.
That's the bottom line.
Yeah.
We are all individuals and, we all probably have our own idea of what would be a good time for us and how we want to interact with certain facets of the Bitcoin community. And hopefully it just keeps growing enough so that everybody has a niche that they can fit in with and that they can feel comfortable in.
Yeah.
Really.
I mean, that said, I don't like the attitude that I feel this tweet was sent out with. I don't agree with that. I do think that that's an issue, but by and large, I mean, it's an interesting perspective. It's interesting, this is in every community, in every, kind of group, this kind of thing occurs and maybe we can think ahead.
Personally, I don't think I would want to go to a Bitcoin meetup that was at a strip club or that had dancers at it.
Right.
I view it as more of a professional thing, and to me, that's not really appropriate for that context. I might go to a strip club with my friends or some other kind of context,
right,
but not really a Bitcoin meetup. That's not what I would want to do. But I also want to say that I am not going to let this tweet stop me from being part of the Bitcoin community.
Right on.
Like, I'm not going to exclude myself from the Bitcoin community because there might be some people in it whose ideas differ from mine about what's appropriate for a Bitcoin meetup,
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, it's really a call, if a woman is offended by this, that just means we need more of you, so that you can...
there's an opportunity to create your own space that would be more welcoming to people who share your views about what you would like to get out of Bitcoin meetups.
Absolutely.
So take the initiative, start your own, right?
Yeah.
I'm a big fan of that. And it's not a cop-out, it's just, that's what free association is about. It's not about trying to censor people from having Bitcoin meetups at strip clubs or whatever.
Right.
It's about, creating a large, diverse space where anybody can find a spot where they fit in and feel comfortable and are valued, right?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I don't ever want to censor anybody, but at the same time, not censoring means that I get to share my feelings on the matter.
Sure.
So.
Yeah, right, exactly. You shouldn't be censored from speaking out against it either if you don't like it. So
exactly.
Yeah, it's a free market thing, and I think as time goes on, that problem will take care of itself because there are going to be more people participating.
Yes, it will, as long as they're aware.
Okay, this is Sex and Science Hour, and there's more coming up. Stay tuned. Sex and Science Hour is part of the Let's Talk Bitcoin network, and we are so excited.
Wait a minute. What's Bitcoin?
What's Bitcoin?
What's Bitcoin?
Well, you'll have to listen to Let's Talk Bitcoin to find out. It's a twice-weekly podcast, and you can find it at letstalkbitcoin.com.
Okay, I gotta know.
Yeah, you really should probably get on that.
It has a whole network?
Yeah, we're part of it.
How did I not know about this?
You must have missed the memo that we were on their network. Anyway, now back to Sex and Science Hour. Here at Sex and Science Hour, we love EasyDNS. They let you register domains, handle security for your website, email addresses, pretty much anything related to DNS or domain names, they can do it. They have a friendly staff of actual human beings, so if you need customer support, they will always be there for you. Plus, they are outspoken advocates for your internet freedom. And they take Bitcoin, of course. They now have fully managed WordPress and web hosting too, so you can do everything you need related to your website from EasyDNS. Take a look at their website at easydns.com. We think you'll like what you see. Trust easydns.com for your DNS and web hosting needs. Now back to Sex and Science Hour. Welcome back to Sex and Science Hour. We are, of course, on the Let's Talk Bitcoin network, and we're so happy to be there. You can subscribe to our show by subscribing to the greater Let's Talk Bitcoin podcast feed. And I hear there's going to be a hard fork at some point where they're going to split off.
Oh, no. It's going to be an alt podcast. It's an altcast.
Oh, shit, we're an altcast. I'll have to bleep that out. But yeah, you can subscribe to our show by catching the whole Let's Talk Bitcoin podcast feed. And there's a lot of other good stuff on there.
Yeah, there's great shows. There's no reason not to be a part of it.
Original shows and Let's Talk Bitcoin, the flagship podcast, of course. So all there for you at letstalkbitcoin.com. And of course, you can send us listener emails, feedback, comments, questions, relationship issues at show@sexandsciencehour.com. That does go both to me and Brian.
Yes.
And Brian, we talked about a lot of sex in the first segment, and it was a little longer than normal. So now we're going to talk about something not remotely nearly as exciting, but I still think it's kind of interesting. Light bulbs.
Light bulbs?
Yeah, there's some light bulb drama.
Okay.
I know you are really actually interested in light bulbs, right? Didn't you have kind of a family thing where your dad was in the light bulb business?
My dad is a real stickler about light bulbs, yeah.
Yeah.
To put it simply, about light in general.
Well, with good reason, because light really affects your environment. You know, it does affect your brain. You know, through your eyes, you're kind of linked to the outside world. And things like looking at blue light before you go to bed can keep you up. It can mess with your sleep rhythms. Looking at daylight while you're outside can help you feel more awake. And there's all kinds of stuff like that.
There's quite a few different things. And the problem is a lot of our modern light bulbs they're not in line with they're antithetical to
way our brains work.
Exactly. I mean, CFLs, which are compact fluorescent bulbs, lights, they're fluorescents, and
for
they
some
constantly
people,
flicker. They can cause headaches,
seizures,
a whole slew of problems. But I heard that Philips has. I think what a lot of these new design light bulbs, their main problem with adoption, I think most people unconsciously don't like them because I think they unconsciously recognize they don't feel good or it's
Yeah.
keeping them awake or something like that.
Well, I wonder if some people don't like them because they're mandated. Because
That too.
in the U.S., the government has. Did they ban incandescent light bulbs?
They've effectively banned incandescent light bulbs from coming into this country. Pretty much.
They're being kind of phased out.
Right. They're still on the shelves.
You can still kind of get them, but they're
Yeah.
like contraband, and then people look at you like you're hurting the environment, you evil person.
Right.
Mining bitcoins and using those incandescent bulbs. We're going to throw you in the slammer.
Yeah, we need to talk about that. But
We will.
Yeah, but there's these companies like Philips and Sylvania, whoever else. They think in their mind that the problem is how that these new light bulbs look funny. Even the LED bulbs look funny. Which they're kind of the new hot thing.
They do look funny.
Well, they do, yeah, and they're actually like they're potentially dangerous. I've heard some reports that like the dangers of a broken CFL bulb have been exaggerated. I'm not entirely sure on that myself.
Well, at least when you break an incandescent bulb, it doesn't release any gases into the air.
Yeah, it's harmless.
Yeah.
So a lot of these companies think that the problem is that they look funny, and that's why people aren't buying them or aren't adopting them. And so now I guess Philips is coming out with an LED bulb that looks like right down to the filaments.
Yeah.
Looks like an incandescent bulb.
Mm-hmm.
And, I have a problem with this because it doesn't actually solve the problem. And I think Philips, the market's going to speak, and Philips is going to realize that that's not the problem at all.
Not to mention that they're like 10 times, they're $12, which...
Well, but what people will say is that, well, it's worth it because they last for like 10 or 20 years.
Only if you keep using it for 10 or 20 years.
Right. But, I mean, that's kind of a lie because there's an incandescent bulb that's been on for over 110 years now. In California, literally.
That one bulb.
Yeah. Well, I mean, they've left it on. They've made sure, because it's famous for it now. So, but my point is that incandescent bulbs, when made properly, can last, or with using lower power consumption, can last a long time too.
Has that one not been turned on and off? Because I hear that the more cycles it goes through of turning on and off, that can damage the filament.
Yeah, I mean, that's true. It's the same thing with the car engine. It's like the turning on and off that actually damages it. Otherwise, they run forever. But well, that's another story. But with that light bulb, the thing is it's been very low power running to it, and it's only been directly stayed on since like the 70s. Before then, there were power outages. Now it has a generator hooked up to it to make sure it stays on because it's kind of a national monument almost.
Right. But it's going to be like the redwood tree that's been around for 3,000 years.
Right. But I mean, the fact is, it is still on. Incandescents can pull this trick off, as to where these LEDs and CFLs, they can last 5 years, 20 years, but it's not necessary. And this isn't crazy science. The Japanese actually knew this for a while. A lot of people don't know, but the Game Boys, the reason why Game Boys were never natively backlit or even front-lit, and that Nintendo finally caved when they front-lit Game Boys, is because they knew that kids would not be able to fall asleep at night. And even adults, because of the blue, light
coming into your brain.
Yeah. And so this isn't. A lot of people think this is woo-woo science, and no, there's other. There's whole fields of study that have known this for a long, long, long time. That this is an issue.
Wow. Well, but what about like this light bulb is supposed to have a color temperature that's more mimics a incandescent bulb. It's like a warm white light.
Yeah,
but it's not exactly the same, is it?
I don't think there's any way you can get an LED to do that. Right. To pull off, because what the idea is that color blues, incandescent generally is overpowered by red. Mm-hmm. And that's what, the red coloring is essentially, that's that kind of simulates. That's not to say that this was the idea when the light bulb got invented. Okay. But that
kind of like a candle or a fire.
It ironically simulates a candle, and it simulates, a sunset being reddish. And so I don't think an LED can pull off that trick, And in fact, I mean, even sunlight, what do they call them? The sunlight bulbs that are supposed
grow
to
bulbs?
that are supposed to simulate,
like for fish and aquariums and stuff and plants.
Yeah, and for like even for photography and things like that. Yes, they emulate the spectrum to some degree.
Yeah, but it's not really exactly like daylight.
But they're still forcing that blue on you. That's not supposed to be there.
So are we just Luddites? Like, should we just go back to lighting candles and just say, screw it?
No, I mean, incandescents work great.
I think the thing is, you can't force technologies on people by law. It just doesn't work.
No, right. I mean, and that's it. These companies, they need to make money. And
speaking of the motivations for, Part of it is money, Brian, I think, but part of it is this sort of misguided environmentalism that is more a political game than anything else.
There's a lot of that.
And I wanted to talk about something else on the show. Have you heard of Carboncoin?
Briefly.
Yeah.
Like, I heard about its first incarnation, and then I hear its second one is even crazier.
So before people jump down our throats, like, I have to be honest and say that I have not really tried to go down the rabbit hole of looking into climate change and trying to see what I think about it and sort out the fact from fiction. Basically, the conclusion that I've come to is that it's going to be really difficult to know the truth. Like, it seems like, yeah, probably the climate is changing as it has been throughout the history of Earth. Mm-hmm. Are humans doing it? I'm not sure.
Right.
And should humans be forced to scrimp and save on their electricity usage and farts and so forth to save the planet? That's where I think it gets a little dubious, because there are lots of people who want to use that kind of data to control you, really.
Yeah.
And so I'm afraid of that. And of course, just because I don't like it doesn't mean it's true. But is force the solution? I'm going to say no, pretty much every time that question is asked.
Sure. I'm a huge fan of green technology for many, many reasons. It's more efficient. There's nothing wrong with being power efficient. I mean, also, you don't want a company dumping, garbage into rivers, which does occur. You know. Now, I mean, like you said, laying out a law and using force against them isn't really the answer to that.
Well, it's important to remember the U.S. military is the biggest polluter out there.
Yeah.
And they do that all under the color of law. That's totally sanctioned. And even companies like BP during that oil spill, they have immunity from the government. They have protection from the government.
Right. It's interesting because it's something that gets put up against Bitcoin a lot. In that, Bitcoin is, using so much energy, it's wasting, who knows what part of the environment it's killing because of that, which that's crap, because when you think about the fact that we use cotton money and paper money.
Yeah, and ink and bleach and all these chemicals to print, receipts and money. Yeah.
Right. The modern economy is far more detrimental than a bunch of computers ever could be.
Totally.
In my opinion. So, and there's answers to that. I mean, the cryptocurrency community is already coming up with answers to that, like NXT.
Proof of stake.
Uses proof of stake.
Yeah, it's not just Next, it's other cryptocurrencies too. But supposedly that could be greener. But, when you look at the savings of the Bitcoin network, even if it does use power, it does consume power. However, it consumes so much less power, and it's such a more efficient way of doing things than the current legacy financial system.
Absolutely.
That it's just no comparison. And nobody ever talks about that. But, just generally with so-called green technologies, my opinion of that is that, if it makes sense, if it saves people money, if it saves people effort and time, then it totally makes sense to go green.
Right.
If it is actually more efficient.
Right.
But with certain things, if it requires you to sacrifice, to suffer, to give up, to have this self-sacrificial kind of mindset, people aren't going to do it. Right. Except maybe a very small select group of people who basically feels guilty about it and is guilted into it.
Right.
And B, it doesn't work. Like, the reality is telling you that it doesn't make sense to do this if you're having to suffer and save and scrimp in order to get that green feeling. Kind of like recycling paper, like the trucks to take it to the recycling plants and the bleaches that are required are terrible for the environment. And it is not a net savings in terms of pollution or dollars, and that's just one of those things that doesn't really make a lot of sense. Yeah,
or what it takes to, to create the batteries that hybrid cars run on.
Oh, yeah.
That far more destroying to the environment. I mean, if you
Yet, the town we live in, you see people driving around with snarky license plates that say 60 mpg and stuff like that.
Yeah. I mean, if you really wanted to save the environment, drive old cars until they die and,
Yeah, don't buy a new car,
Don't buy a new car because you're
don't buy that Prius.
Yeah, you're perpetuating the system by doing that.
Yeah, well, I mean, we could rant about this for a while, but it seems like there's just a lot of emotional language in this kind of debate, and not
Sure.
not a lot of clarity about
Not a lot of common sense
about do things actually make sense on a really big level to do. But anyway, with this Carboncoin thing, we got to talk about this. So there's a new altcoin that it's called Carboncoin, and it seems like to me like an attempt to blockchainize the idea of carbon credits, which are basically, there have been governments that in certain cities have issued a certain number of carbon credits, and they give them out to companies and stuff, and each one has so many, and it's like they have permission to release some amount of carbon into the atmosphere.
Yeah.
And if they release more, then they either have to buy carbon credits from some other company, or they have to like pay a fee to the government or something like that.
Right.
And people, there are some people who claim, oh yeah, it's a free market. No, it's not. It's an artificial thing imposed by the government that is not a free market.
No, and
just because you can trade the credits with each other, there would be no credits if it weren't for the government imposing them. But with Carboncoin, I suppose it is a voluntary thing. They are collecting some kind of donations to plant trees. But with Carboncoin, it's still mined. They have a script mining algorithm. It's not proof of stake, as I understand it.
It's proof of work. So they're using up all that energy that they're complaining about, that they're trying to work
but
against
they're using
in the
it to
Bitcoin.
plant trees, so it makes sense. It offsets it. I mean, it's so weird. And there's this story where the founder of Carboncoin started programming it, and then basically they did a pre-mine of about 1% of the coins or something like that to so-called incentivize people to work on projects with Carboncoin. And then basically he found out that there was some kind of possible 51% attack, dumped all the pre-mine coins and took off.
Wow.
And so then somebody picked up the project or something like that. But I mean, that is a red flag for an altcoin,
Yeah, and just the idea itself. Like I said, it's a tax. This is one of the things that people like about cryptocurrencies is they're not taxed.
It sounds like somebody is just trying to create money or to get money off of the goodwill of people who believe that it's bad to pollute, and they feel guilty for emitting carbon dioxide and breathing and stuff, and driving a car and turning on the lights.
Yeah, if you're really concerned about how much the Bitcoin, network, affects the environment or whatever, then jump to Purecoin or NXT or do. I mean, there's solutions out there.
Become an anti-war activist. As we said, the military is the biggest polluter.
Yeah.
They pollute more than you could ever control your own carbon output in your own lifetime.
Yeah, absolutely.
We got to look at the bigger picture.
Yeah, I've heard statistics that even just the tankers, gas tankers that go around. If you turned off, and there's tons of those, if you turned off 5 of them, it would equate to the amount of emissions that almost every car on the planet puts out there.
Wow.
Okay. So there's other solutions. Just nobody wants to actually talk about those because those actually hurt big business. When really, a lot of this legislation, a lot of this taxation, which is all this Carboncoin really is just meant to hurt you. It's not meant to hurt the big boys.
Yeah, that's always how it works.
Yeah.
So, look at this stuff with a skeptical eye. And I'm sure we're going to get a lot of heat for this, but I will be going outside and planting a tree as soon as the show is over, just to let everybody know. And I'm not going to do it with Carboncoins.
Hey, I dig, like I said, I dig environmentalism.
Yeah.
Okay, I'm with you on that. I just do not dig taxation and force. And they're one and the same.
Yeah, exactly.
So,
or scammy pre-mining. And
that kind of nonsense.
Yeah. Anyway, well, I'm sure we'll get some emails from that, but bring them on. That's fine. Like
Please.
George Bush said, bring it on.
Okay. Terrible guy to quote.
Brian, we got to take a break, but we'll be right back. There's more Sex and Science Hour coming up. Stay tuned. We are going to talk about... What are we going to talk about next? Oh, as if we haven't pissed off the environmentalists enough, we're going to talk about why vegetarians are unhealthy.
We're on a rail.
Coming up here on Sex and Science Hour. Stay tuned. Sex and Science Hour is looking for sponsors. We do our best to do an entertaining show that is heard by thousands of people each week. Do you have a project, business, product, or service that could match our audience's interests? Let us know. Contact Brian at letstalkbitcoin.com to find out more. That's Brian with an I at letstalkbitcoin.com. Here at Sex and Science Hour, we really appreciate your support. We've received tips from listeners, not just in Bitcoin, but with other altcoins. Those are always listed in our show notes in case you want to send us a tip, which we thank you for very, very much. If you don't have Bitcoins, altcoins, or you just want to send us a tip in a way that's free to you, all you have to do is click on something, then you can help us out. Simply do your normal shopping on Amazon through our Amazon affiliate links. Those are listed in our show notes, and we've got Amazon US, UK, and Canada for you. Thank you so much for all your support. And now, back to the show. This is Sex and Science Hour with me, Stephanie, and you, Brian.
Of course.
Me, Tarzan, you, Jane.
Me, Tarzan, you, Jane.
No, you're Jane.
I'm Jane?
I'm Tarzan.
I don't know. I'm looking. I don't... You look like Jane to me.
All right. Well, Brian, you know, if you're Tarzan, you probably wouldn't be a vegetarian, right? You'd be like a hunter-gatherer, paleo type, huh?
Absolutely.
There's been a new study that came out that's going to be pretty controversial, but I thought it was really interesting. And this is actually something that paleo people have been saying for a while. This is probably going to ignite the paleo versus veggie wars.
The Paleolithic diet versus the vegetarians.
The Paleolithic diet, which is, you know, a diet that's probably richer in animals and
high fat, no gluten.
Right. No grains,
lots of protein,
vegetables and fruits probably, but stuff you could find out gathering and hunting in the wilderness.
Theoretically, I mean, or that matches up with it. Of course, you're not going to find like a pteranodon outside to.
Well, unless you look hard enough, then you could. But I agree. A lot of people who eat a paleo diet aren't going out and like hunting their own squirrels per se.
Right.
They are just buying grass-fed cow at the grocery store and things like that.
Right. They're just trying to get the nutrients that evolution may possibly consider best.
Right. But they, and the whole idea is that for most of humans' evolutionary history, we ate a hunter-gatherer diet, which didn't include grains. And so we're adapted genetically for that. And the window of time, like the last 11,000 years or so, that we've been eating an agricultural, like a diet that's more adapted to agricultural farming,
right?
We're not really, we haven't evolved for that yet. Our genes haven't caught up to our diet.
Right. But now a lot of vegetarians would say theirs is actually the original diet. But the question becomes okay, which one by the numbers shows as being healthier? And the study you're talking about with vegetarians, I mean, what's the story?
Well, yeah. And I guess we have to preface this by saying like, there could be, just like, the so-called paleo diet could be a huge variety of different foods.
Yes.
There is a lot of variety in what vegetarians eat.
Absolutely.
I remember some vegetarians that I knew in college, and all they ate was like pizza and grilled cheese. So like there's the pizza and grilled cheese vegetarians, and then there's the vegetarians who actually eat like vegetables and, perhaps they eat like grains and maybe they're into whole grains and stuff like that.
Yeah, and real quick, this is an interesting point in that like a lot of vegetarians I support, when a lot of people choose a different diet, a lot of times it's just them becoming more mindful about what they're putting in their bodies.
Yeah.
And that alone.
So of course they feel better.
Yeah, so naturally they feel better. And I support that for anybody, be a vegetarian, Paleolithic, or what.
Right.
Quite frankly, I just want to make that clear.
Yeah, us too. And like full disclosure, Brian, you and I are paleo cave people.
Yes.
Right. We're not going out and hunting our own squirrels, but we do eat a diet that I feel works best for me. I've tried a lot of different diets, and I think that this, the kind of low carb, higher fat type diet works better for me. And we do, of course, eat a lot of veggies and stuff like that.
I feel the same way. I was a vegetarian / vegan for quite a few years.
And you were quite a bit heavier then too, right?
No, actually, that was the problem, is I was incredibly light.
Oh, you got skinny, you lost your muscle.
I'm intrigued by this study, but the thing, I didn't have any muscle mass, and like I looked lanky. Like it was healthy to the antithesis.
That's what I notice about vegetarians. Like often they're very thin with not much muscle mass, or they're overweight.
Right.
And sometimes people who eat like low carb or whatever too can be overweight. That's for sure. And there's a lot of variation in that, but it seems like vegetarians to me kind of stratify into two different groups like that. Yeah. There are some vegan bodybuilders. I don't know how they pull it off. Maybe it's just genetics. Good. I mean, but like a paleo diet could be vegan. or could be vegetarian.
Yep, there are some famous blogs out there where it's a vegetarian or vegan Paleolithic dieter.
So there could be some intersection between the two. I don't know. It's really interesting. Like, humans are genetically diverse, and probably within some range, some of us are better adapted to eating certain things versus others.
Sure.
You know what I mean? Like, some people probably do better with fewer carbs. Some people do better with higher carbs, less fat. You know, we're all different, but we're different within a range. Like, I don't think anybody could say, like, yeah, it's just the ideal diet for me is marshmallows for every meal, you know? So anyway, it's an area where it's hard to sort out the truth from the fiction. Mm-hmm. But here's what a study said. So this is done in Austria, and they looked at people who eat different kinds of diets. And actually, interestingly, they looked at not only people who ate like a vegetarian diet, but like carnivorous diets, which were rich in fruits and vegetables. Then there was another group of carnivorous diets that were richer in meat. So like within the carnivores, they stratified them into different groups. And what they found, they didn't separate the grilled cheese and pasta vegetarians from the vegetable vegetarians, but what they found was that the vegetarians in the study were more physically active, and they drank less alcohol and smoked less tobacco. So they had like behaviors that are kind of associated with better health.
Sure.
However, they also had a higher socioeconomic status and a lower body mass index. So they may have been thinner and richer and better educated, but they had a higher risk of cancer, allergies, and mental health problems.
Wow.
These vegetarians who didn't smoke, didn't drink, they're like, you know, these teetotaling good people behaviors.
Right.
But they have a 50% greater risk of heart attacks, a 50% increase in incidences of cancer, and we're twice as likely to have allergies.
That's amazing. And you got to wonder, like, what's, you know, with modern medical science, you know, what would be the causation? And if you don't have drinking and tobacco, where else do you look?
Gluten?
You know, other than diet, maybe gluten, which I mean, I don't know.
People have been saying it on the internet a lot recently. And
there's a big push for gluten-free, you know, recently, in that people are realizing gluten's like a real problem.
Yeah. Yeah, so, at least for
some. I mean,
some
you know,
people.
There might be 10% of the world that has adapted to eating gluten just fine. Mm-hmm. You know, no doubt there's been statistics about that, but it seems like by and large, I mean, gluten's glue. That's really what it like. In fact, that's even what
it means in Latin.
That's what it means in Latin. But I mean, it's, you know, that's kind of like how it became popular, is it made food, you know, all kind of come together.
Yeah. Well, supposedly there's all these different problems with it, and it's not easy to digest, and then it gets in your intestines and it kind of messes things up, and then your guts become kind of leaky, and other proteins from foods leak out, and then you get allergies to all these different things, and supposedly it can even get into your brain and cause, you know, that's maybe where the mental health stuff comes from. Mm-hmm. But I just thought this was interesting because this study is controversial. I mean, this goes against the dogma, and it's published, of course, in PLOS One, which was the journal that we covered, I think on 2 shows ago, maybe, where we talked about the genetically not modified plant material getting into people's bloodstreams. Yeah. That was where that was published too. But sometimes, you know, like, I can see that because, you know, sometimes scientists, when something goes against the dogma, they don't want to touch it and they don't want to publish it. The peer reviewers are like, nope, this can't be true.
Well, I mean, how scary would it be for governments around the world to denounce the food pyramid as we know it?
Oh, yeah. I think there are lots of people out there who know that, like, if everybody started eating meat, guess what? There's not enough food for everybody on the planet.
That could very well be true.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, you know, and just the fact of, like, I mean, you'd have to change entire school curriculums. I mean, it would cost...
It would be a mess.
Billions of dollars to fix the food pyramid problem.
Oh, well, I mean, I grew up in the 90s, and man, I remember the propaganda of the low fat. The fat is bad, use oils sparingly. It's at the top of the food pyramid, you know, at the very top. And then on the bottom is bread and grains. Got to eat 6 to 11 servings of pasta, bread, and cereal every day. And that made me sick.
Yeah.
And fat.
Yeah.
And it doesn't work for everybody.
Yeah.
You know, and that food pyramid was so heavily subsidized by the wheat and dairy industries. I mean, and corn, you know, these are huge businesses that get giant government subsidies. And I don't mean to sound conspiratorial. I know it does sound a little conspiratorial, but at least in the U.S., those types of industrial farmers that grow corn, wheat, soybeans, all those stuff, they are so heavily subsidized. And they have very powerful lobbies. And milk industry too is another one that gets lobbying and subsidies. And, I wouldn't be surprised if they had a great deal of influence over the food pyramid.
Yeah, absolutely.
What the government essentially tells people to eat.
Yeah.
So anyway, we'll stop. Is this show going to be controversial enough? Geez, we're going to offend so many people here.
It's all right. Then we get to do an episode with all listener emails.
Let's talk about Bitcoin for a minute, because we got a listener email that I thought was kind of interesting, because speaking of controversial, you, Brian, have given talks at Bitcoin conferences about gold, haven't you?
This is true, yeah. And mainly my point with these talks is just to say that, value is subjective, meaning something only has value because you put the value into it, not that has its own intrinsic value, that doesn't actually really exist.
Right.
And that, you might as well use whatever you want, because there's a lot of people that say, don't use Bitcoin, use gold, And my whole my whole point is that no, nothing really has value. And I debunk all the statements that get made about why gold is so great.
I do have a minor bone to pick with that. I think things have value. You keep saying nothing has value. It does have value. It just doesn't have intrinsic value. It doesn't have value that depends on the properties of the thing. That's hard-coded in whatever it is.
Right. Yeah. That's why I try to make it clear that it has subjective value.
Right.
But that is the singular only value it has.
Yeah.
Like gold. Gold's value, if it's been used, and it has been used for a long time, not consistently, but it has been used for a long time, at the end of the day, or at the beginning of the day, the beginning of time, for humans anyway, its only value could possibly be that it was pretty. And so my point is that, well, if we're going to base an entire economy at the end of the day, because something's pretty, on something that is pretty, no.
But there are plenty of things that are pretty and aren't as valuable as gold per unit.
Sure.
Yeah, I mean, it's just kind of a mystery why gold became this paragon of value and stuff like that.
It is actually a mystery.
Yeah. One thing I'll say about gold that's cool is that nobody can make more gold.
That's not true. They can. In labs, they can make more gold.
Well, how expensive is it?
Incredibly expensive.
Okay.
It comes at great cost, but...
Well, okay. Well, there you go. But basically, it exists in the earth, and nobody had the chance to print it. You know what I mean?
That's true. But you can always find more, too.
Well, you can, but all the gold that's in the earth is in the earth.
Right.
Pretty much, unless we start mining asteroids and things like that. But anyway, we're getting off topic here. A listener writes in and says, I don't agree about... I think English might be not his first language, but he says, I don't agree about your gold opinion. It will worth at least for next centuries. Don't forget China and India. They love gold, and even in the West, for a part of population, it will be store of value for a long time. Bitcoin is gold 2.0, but gold 1.0 will survive forever. Sent from my iPhone.
That's entirely possible, just because, I'm not going to argue that. My problem isn't that I'm not saying you can't use gold. I'm saying that you can't tell someone, don't use Bitcoin, use gold. I mean, just use both. And they each have advantages over the other.
There's gold and silver, yeah.
Yeah. And there's economists who would say, no, there can only be one currency.
Right. But yeah, you don't say that about Bitcoin, right? You would say that gold and Bitcoin are valid competitors to each other, or they both have advantages or things you can do with them?
Yeah, they may as well just, run together for all time. That's fine with me, whether I think they're going to or not. So right. I agreed, that I think the way I come off is a very hard line, saying that don't use gold. I'm not saying that. You can use gold, you can use palladium, you can use it all. Just don't tell other people what they can use.
Indeed, I'm seeing a theme here, Brian.
Yeah.
Anyway, this has been Sex and Science Hour. Thank you for tuning into our show. You can subscribe to our feed at letstalkbitcoin.com and look for a new show every Thursday.
Always a good time.
And our email, show@sexandsciencehour.com. Thanks for tuning in. You've just heard Sex and Science Hour.
Game over. Play again next week.